Clearly seen purpose and exquisite fit for all of life is an underutilized gift from God in evangelism and apologetics. Coming up on today's edition of Origins, Sharing Nature's Design with Dr. Randy Guliuzza. Welcome to Origins. I'm Ray Heipel. It's an honor to be your host today. During this program, we showcase interesting guests who present evidence from science, along with other important facts validating the truth of creation and the accuracy of the Bible. Today's guest, Dr. Randy Guliuzza, has undergraduate degrees in engineering and theology and a Master of Public Health from Harvard University. In 2008, he retired as Lieutenant Colonel from the U.S. Air Force as a medical doctor. Now he's a speaker and author for the Institute for Creation Research in Dallas and has represented ICR in several scientific debates. Welcome, Dr. Guliuzza.
Oh, well, thank you very much. It's a blessing.
It's great to have you on the show today. We're going to be sharing nature's design. What does that mean?
Well, this is another how-to talk for all of our viewers today on taking the design that everybody sees and sharing it with your friends. It's going to explain to them, what do you see when you see design? And it takes us right back to the whole origins debate, right to the very basics. Were you and I, and all the other forms of life on this planet, intelligently designed? Was that the cause of our origination? Or did we come about through chance and tinkering?
So today's topic is really for those in our audience to learn how to witness to God's truth in creation, to God's truth all around them.
Exactly, exactly. And we go with the basic premise. It's a biblically based premise, but it's also supported by science that how, in other words, when we look at life, how life fits together is really consistent with intelligent design, intelligent agency, God's agency, putting everything together, and not a result of just natural processes working out by themselves. And this is a biblical basis, it's well supported by science, and so this is what we'll be discussing today. But primarily it's a how-to talk. How, in other words, can we distinguish random tinkering? If you look on this picture here, you see some random tinkering.
Yes.
You see some evidence of bad design from real design. When we can obviously point it out, this is real design right here. We see this engine, we see all those parts working together, that's real design, and we see this creature here, that's really designed. So we see those and we're able to instantly recognize those from chance events. So we're going to discuss how do you explain that to others, how do you see it, how do you recognize it, which takes us really, how do we actually see things?
Well, you know, and it's something that as Christians that we really need to know how to do, because this is sort of one of the great lies of our day, one of the things that the world, the deceptions of the world that's out there that we all face. And we need to be able to give an answer for the reason and for the hope that we have.
Exactly, exactly. So I'll step to the board and I'll explain for everyone just some things that are not really always obvious to us, and that is actually how in the world do we see anything? How do we see design? How do we see you when I'm looking at you? What actually happens? Well, you actually are taking in data that is reflecting off something, light reflecting off you or reflecting off anything else. We take the data in and it goes to other areas of our brain, not just the visual area, which is back here at the back part of the brain. It's initially processed there, and then signals are sent out to all other areas of your brain where the data is rapidly being matched to memories. So when I look at you, I have a memory of a man. I have a memory of a man in a suit, and I've stored all of those things through my experiences in life, and I'm rapidly matching that data. So this is actually what happens when you see something or when you get the sensation of visualizing something in your mind. Your brain is matching the data to your memories. And when they match right, then you get the perception of something that I see. Now this is very important in the creation evolution debate because it's an it's an intuitive feeling that when people look at a monkey, or when they look at a giraffe, they sense they see design. Intuitively they sense it because their brain is matching patterns of what they see with things that they have previously stored that really were designed.
You know, this seems to be really foundational because we're not talking about, you know, a school of thought or a kind of philosophy or belief system. We're talking about how the brain actually works with the eye, that this is just the way in which sight happens. I mean, you can't choose to see a different way. This is the way we see.
That's exactly right. And it ties right into what the Bible says. The Bible says that everybody clearly sees the design in Romans chapter 1, verses 19 and 20. It says, because that which may be known of God is manifest. God has made it very plain to them. Very plain. It's so plain that they can instantly recognize it as really, if we did a literal translation from the Greek, what this would be telling us, for God has shown it unto them. And we can actually see invisible things of God from the visible things that are made. And the Bible says they are clearly seen, and what we clearly see, what we translate is made in this verse, is literally His workmanship. We see signs and evidences of workmanship in living things which correspond to the workmanship that we see in man-made things.
And so our brains naturally, they associate these effects, if you will, to a cause that is capable of producing them.
Exactly. Right on. You see the effect, and you know the cause with a man-made thing. We don't see the cause with God-made things, but we see the effect, and they correspond so well to the man-made things that we infer very clearly that He is the cause, and we can infer so clearly that we can actually see invisible things of God.
I like that
about
we're
His
understanding
nature.
Because we must associate it this way. It's the way our brains work.
It's exactly the way the brain works, and it seems the Lord has set us up like that. And we know everybody sees it. Jerry Coyne, he is an ardent evolutionist. He was a full professor at the University of Chicago, wrote a book, Why Evolution is True. On page 1, he makes this almost an admission. If anything is true about nature, it is that plants and animals seem intricately and almost perfectly designed for living their lives. Nature resembles a well-oiled machine with every species an intricate cog or gear. What does all this seem to imply? A master mechanic. Of course.
Of course. It's self-evident.
It's pretty self-evident.
Yes. But here, nature means reality, right? If anything is true about reality, is what he's saying when he uses the way he's using that word. I know they use it different ways, but here, you know, the things that are made, nature, reality, reality resembles a well-oiled
machine. Very, very clear, but he suppresses that truth, obviously, there. So, the application is this. If we're talking to our friends, we can be confident inside that creation-based thinking is what really comes natural to them. It is the natural way to explain things, and you actually have to work evolutionary thinking into someone's mind because it is not natural.
Like the verse in Romans just before the ones we looked at, that men suppress the truth.
They have to suppress that truth.
In unrighteousness.
Yes. That's it. So we're confident when we're talking about design, even if someone says they don't see the design, you know in your heart they see the design, just like Jerry Coyne sees the design. Even if Richard Dawkins, another ardent evolutionist, says biology is the study of complicated things that give the appearance of having been designed for purpose, meaning they only look that way, but they really aren't that way. We know that he sees the design. So the question comes up, why would Richard Dawkins even ask something, or why would he say something so counterintuitive to all of our experience? That's because they come from a naturalistic worldview where only explanations which exclude design automatically exclude the design are allowed. And that's why Scott Todd, testifying about the Kansas City debates over creation evolution, said even if all the data point to an intelligent designer, a hypothesis is excluded because it is not naturalistic.
Wow. All the evidence can say something, and he's going to say, we're going to decide against the evidence because, I mean, in effect, we're not going to be scientists at this point. We are going to just believe in our, whatever you want to call it, false belief system.
That's right. You summed it up. They've moved from the realm of acting like a scientist to more someone who acts in terms of a religious view, which their naturalistic hypothesis is. So that's why we had to discuss, what does it mean to see? How do you see something? Because your prior programming, which is put into you a lot by school, can really affect what people actually see. And we can program people to see rock layers and see that they're old, even though they may not be old, because you are storing these in your memories and you're associating the incoming data with your memories. And this is why it's very important just to understand why people believe.
So we start with the same data, but we've been taught to interpret it a certain way, and from then on we see it that way.
We are. But it's even deeper. It's even deeper than the interpretation. Interpretation is relying on a set of rules or frameworks. This is a gestalt. It's an intuitive thing where you take what's naturally there and you replace it so that when the Bible says we naturally see the design, we've now reprogrammed our brain.
So they're not even sort of intentionally doing it anymore, they're just doing it automatically.
Automatically,
Wow.
because that is what they have put in. And that's why the programming, perception, connection, what you have put in to your brain, the programming, and what you see when you look at something is very, very important. Because the case for intelligent design, as it says in Romans 1, rests on the fact that we can recognize almost instantly design when we see it. And they're asserting that what we see only looks like it was designed but really wasn't. It's more than a suppression, it's a complete reprogramming of what you see. It's very, very important.
So they're sort of learning to believe what they see is an illusion, that the reality is something else.
That's right. It completely changes their impression of reality. And that's why Jerry Corn can say that life on Earth evolved gradually, beginning with one primitive species. It then branched out over time, throwing off many new and diverse species. And the process, this is what he's programmed into his mind, the process producing the illusion of design is natural selection. This, as we talked about earlier, the natural selector, this ability to project volition onto nature becomes the substitute designer, the substitute God.
A force is choosing.
That's right.
And
Force is
Force
choosing.
is choosing, which is
And all of that.
contradictory.
So prior programming affects what we see because people may really see things that aren't there, or they may not see something that really is there.
Like a mirage, if we think we see water in the desert or
Exactly.
something.
It's not there. But in this particular case, we're seeing design and they've programmed the brain to where they don't see the design, or vice versa. It can go the other way around. So this is the main question, and particularly one when we're talking to our friends. What is the best explanation for the design found in nature? Is it real design, or is it this illusion of design which people have been able to program into their minds? And we have to be able to come up with some way of determining the difference between those two.
I like that question because we're actually asking what scientists should ask: what is the best explanation for the data?
That's right. This is a very scientifically oriented question for us to ask there. So what is design? How in the world does anybody know when they see design? How do they sense it? Well, people kind of know when they see something looks like it's designed, but then if I were to come up and say, well, tell me what you're seeing, explain it to me, they would, well, let me think about that for a minute. Well, we'll hopefully let them think about it for a minute by pointing out some key features of design. So if I were to ask you real quick, about how long did this project begin? You see a foundation there to a house. About how long do you think that began?
I wouldn't think very long, maybe a week or so at the most.
A week or so. That's what most people would say. In fact, this is a foundation of the house that we built. I took a year off from school and when our kids, and we built this house ourselves from scratch. So we placed this footing. The reality is that this foundation started years ago because all design starts in someone's mind with the information. In fact, it's the information which is really simply looking at the work that's there, and it's the design that's actually there. The projects always start in the mind of the designer. And you can't see it because it's immaterial, but it's that information which sets the starting point, the goals, the process. It's the information which overrides everything. So even though you didn't see information in the footing, information was just as important to that footing as the concrete was.
Yeah, absolutely, because somebody had to plan how much dirt to remove and how to level it, and all of that was probably written out somewhere, and that plan then had to be put into motion with the machines and so forth. And of course, if it's in Pennsylvania, all the permits and everything else that you have to get would probably take years sometimes.
Now, that might really push it back by years for something. So plans and specifications, like you just said, someone had to draw it all out. They always indicate design, and in all of human history, whenever we see plans and specifications, it is always the result of a real designer. So it's the information which really is the
Welcome back to Origins. We're talking to Dr. Randy Guliuzza, who's been sharing about the marvelous design in living things. Randy, we just started to talk a little bit about DNA, and we have a slide here. Can you tell us what we're seeing?
Well, yes. We talked just a moment before about plans and specifications, and I mentioned that every time we see plans and specifications, they always indicate design, because in all of human history, anytime we see those, they always have an intelligent source. Well, DNA is like plans and specifications, but not exactly like plans and specifications. It's much, much more. And when we're talking about living creatures, we not only have to explain their features of design, we actually have to explain the origins of the information which specifies those features of design. And that's what DNA does. So DNA would specify your body's shape, and it would specify how to make that, but it also specifies all of the materials that are there, how to make a bone, how to make skin, how to make blood, and then it specifies how to put all of those together. So it's a lot like a plan for your body, it's a lot like the specifications of the things to make your body, but in addition to that, it's also a construction schedule. While you're being formed in your mother's womb as a tiny little embryo, the timing of how your body is put together is very, very important, and it's very precisely controlled. And the DNA controls all of that. So it is a lot of information that needs to be explained. And of course, the evolutionary explanation is it has come about through an iterative process of genetic mutations and chance events which have made those suitable for life. Versus what I would argue is, no, this indicates it's the process of a real intelligent designer.
And as we've talked about on previous shows, whenever we're talking DNA, this is something that's completely in every one of your cells, right? Every cell in your body has all of this information to help it interact and to do all those things, the materials, the timing, everything else.
It is. All the cells except your red blood cells, and in a human being, they don't have that. Do you realize that in order to just copy DNA, you have to have tiny little robots within the cell? They proofread it, they unwind it, they cut it apart, they splice things out, they splice things in. Inside the cell, there's tiny little elevators and brace builders. There's tubular supports which hold it all together, just like we would find in that factory as well. When we look inside the membrane of the cell or inside it, we find generators with multiple parts spinning around just like human generators do, and in order to make energy for your body. And they take molecules and they move them from up to high energy states from low energy states so that you can use that for your body. You have motors inside it. They have multiple parts working together just like man-made motors. There's tiny little, as it says, they're microscopic little railroads inside your cells which lay down track. They move parts around in the cell and they're pulling the track up behind them even as they go. There's things that correspond in your cells to batteries, motors, brakes, valves, seals, mounts, joints, bearings, bushings, turning, all the things that we see in man-made items, and then they're put together with other parts which would act like a clamp, a bench, or a vise in a little mini factory. They correspond exactly to these kinds of things in man-made things. And when you mention this to a friend, I guarantee they're going to say, that's pretty impressive.
You know, and I think it's interesting because the Bible tells us that man is made in the image of God. And one of the ways in which we show forth that image is that human beings create things. You know, we create homes, we create clothing, we create utensils to eat with, we create modes of transportation and all these things. And what you're showing us here from the data itself is that in creating these things, we are being like our Creator. We are imitating Him. We are making things that He has made already in us.
That's exactly right. And it's the correspondence is perfect, and that's why we see such incredible things which exalt the Lord Jesus Christ, because all of the things I described to you are so small you could fit hundreds of them on the head of a pin.
So that's the head of the pin there.
That's the head of a pin magnified, and those are tiny little bacteria, and they all have the things that I was talking about that we see in that design. And we recognize that there is a purpose. As you just already mentioned, there is always a purpose for the design. Design and purpose are inseparable. So even though there clearly is a purpose to a wing, there's clearly a purpose to a flipper, there's a purpose to all of these, nobody wants to acknowledge that there is a genuine purpose. In fact, they'll push back against this argument for design that everybody clearly sees. And one of the main ones is that they claim that throughout nature there are evidences of bad design. Maybe your eye is poorly designed or other things. But that's not a really good argument because, first of all, genuine design doesn't need to be the best quality. Here's a picture of somebody. This is clearly a design thing, but it's really poor quality. Nobody would do that, but it's clearly designed. And then on top of that, look at this design. This is almost like an evil design. Well, when someone says, well, what kind of a person would make that? Well, that's really a theological question, not a scientific question, because it's clearly still designed for a purpose.
That's right. And the scientific question would say intelligence had to make that, and there's a purpose in its function. It achieves something. Whether or not we like what it does or whether or not it could do it better, you know, I think of a lot of the cars I've driven. They were not really all that greatly designed, but they were designed.
That's right. Nonetheless.
It could have been better.
That's right. That's exactly right. The good news is that when we see living creatures, they show incredible design. They show remarkable fit and finish. They show ingenuity. They show really the glory of the Lord. And when we try to explain any of those things by natural processes, wind, electricity, natural electricity, lightning, any of those things, they don't put together any of those parts together.
Well, and how absurd it would be to say that, well, because a human being, if he could fly, would be better designed, for achieving things, or if a human being, if we were all as strong as Samson, well, we would be better designed for achieving things, and therefore the status at which we are now, does not show intelligence. I mean, that's absurd.
That is absurd.
Simply because you could get better doesn't deny the fact that you still needed intelligence to get to this level.
Exactly. And that's what they have a hard time explaining. And the Lord has made His designs so profound, so astounding, so complicated that in order to not see them, you really have to suppress the truth to the point of where you would deny Him. But He's really made it so that we are without excuse and that we can clearly see Him through design. So hopefully some of our viewers will be able to explain to their friends just exactly what they see when they're designed and hopefully reprogram their minds so that they see the design. They come to the conclusion that things are a result of intelligent engineering. And that's the whole purpose of sharing nature's design with someone else.
Randy, I really thank you for being on the program today. This is very helpful. I hope our viewers got as much out of it as I did. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you so very much.
And I want to thank you for watching this program today. We've seen that recognizing intelligence and purpose is just the way human beings think. When it's there, we recognize it. And the truth of the matter is the people that we talk to, whether they say they believe in God or not, they can't help but recognize the design that's in this creation all around us. We know that there's a purpose in their suppressing that knowledge, and that's because they don't want to acknowledge Him. But we can help them. We can point out once again, sort of be another voice beside the creation itself, saying to them what the creation is saying. There's a designer, and by the grace of God, He may use you in order to open their eyes. You know, it just goes to show you once again that when we see this creation, when we see everything around us, we know what the Bible says is true because the proof is all around you. Thank you for joining us for this edition of Origins, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you for watching this edition of Origins. For a DVD of this series, you can order online or send a $12 donation to cover shipping and handling, and write to Origins Program number 1905, Cornerstone Network, Wall, Pennsylvania 15148.
This presentation was made possible by the faithful prayers and financial support of you, our Cornerstone family.